Alrighty, thanks again for joining this webinar all about teaching handwriting. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Holly Mitchell. I've been working at TeachStarter for almost 6 years now in a variety of roles, and I have a background in teaching and specifically early childhood teaching as well. I'm also joined online by some fantastic TeachStarter staff who will be on there answering any questions that you might have throughout this webinar. So they'll just introduce themselves right now as I'm speaking to you so you can see who's online. Okay, just a few housekeeping things before we get started. Please, if you can use the Q&A function if you do have any questions. That way any other people that are online who might have a similar question can also see your question and answer from one of our TeachStarter staff. There is a chat function there available, but we'd love it if you could use the Q&A function if possible. All right, let's get into it. We're going to be talking about handwriting. It's a topic that I'm super passionate about. I taught in the early years for quite a few years, and I'm hoping, it's quite a big topic, but I'm hoping that I've managed to include information that's going to be helpful to a large portion of you, and I'll be sharing some hints and tips and strategies for things that I used in the classroom, as well as some resources that we have on the website that might help you in the classroom with your teaching of handwriting as well. Okay, I thought I'd start off with a bit of a case study. It's a story, a real life story that happened to me, and when I started researching and preparing for this webinar, this particular story just came to my mind and I couldn't forget it. So I thought I'd share it. It's about a boy named James. For confidentiality reasons, his name is not James. And this image is not of James, it's just a Shutterstock image, but I thought I'd add it to create some imagery for the story that I'm about to tell. So I was teaching Year 2 and James was new to our school, and we didn't have any information from his previous school. So it was, fresh start for both him and I. And he came in on the first day, lovely boy, really confident, friendly, and fitted in really well with the class. And during the back to school activities, there was no real red flags. He seemed like he was going to cope totally fine for the school year ahead. Now, on the second week of the term, his mum organised an appointment and wanted to talk to me about his previous year. She said that he was not really into writing, he didn't like writing, and last year it became a bit of an issue for him. He started not enjoying school, didn't want to come to school, and he was quite anxious about doing any writing, whether it be story writing or writing for maths. And so his teacher last year decided to get him happy at school, which is what, the main thing. We want our students to be happy at school. So we definitely want to make sure we take away barriers that are causing any stress to them. Decided to let him use his iPad. So he would record mathematics problems or answers to maths on the iPad, and he'd also use the iPad to write stories. So for English, whether it be persuasive text, stories, narrative, he was able to use the iPad, and that seemed to work for him and he was much happier. So his mum just wanted to let me know that that's sort of what had happened the previous year. And whilst I was happy to take that on board, I was a little bit concerned about why he wasn't wanting to do that writing. There must have been something that was causing this issue. So I sat down and had a chat to James and said, can we have a go at doing some writing? We'll still have the iPad there as well, but let's just have a go. Let's have a fresh start. I was not going to push him because I didn't want to cause any of that anxiety again. And it very quickly became evident that in a 40-minute writing session, he would write perhaps one sentence. If I asked him what he was going to write, he had all these fantastic ideas, but when it came to putting pencil to paper, he really, really struggled. And his writing was really faint as well. It was really, really light. So that sort of concerned me a little bit. After a few assessments, chatting to his mum, I was very lucky to have a special ed unit there as well. We basically worked out that his fine motor development wasn't great. His muscles and when he was writing, he said his hand hurt and he found it really, really hard. So he wasn't being lazy, he was just really struggling to write. And I don't know what happened before he came into my class. I don't know what happened in his first year of school. Maybe he was pushed to do some writing and he wasn't quite ready with his fine motor, which then made him have this negative connotation towards writing. So throughout the year, we did a lot of work on his fine motor. I really helped him with his handwriting and he came leaps and bounds. So that's a personal story that actually happened to me with one of the students in my class, and I think it just really proves the importance of doing all of those fundamental building blocks and different activities to help our students with handwriting and the importance of handwriting as well. So, just leave my lid off my water bottle so that I don't disturb anyone while I'm doing that. Let's get on to the actual structure of the webinar. I hope that story, I'd love to hear whether any of those, if you've got a similar story, share it in the Q&A function. We'd love to hear what sorts of handwriting stories or things that have happened in your class where you have really noticed the importance of that fine motor development. It's all about sharing. Okay, in this webinar, we are going to be talking about why handwriting is important in the digital age, so why we shouldn't just be using iPads, what the building blocks for developing good handwriting skills are. I'll also be going over some pre-writing, fine motor and letter formation activity ideas. I'll be covering a few different developmental speed bumps which you might notice in the classroom, such as students struggling with crossing the midline, with letter reversal or poor pencil grip. And I'll also highlight some of our resources that we've got on the website that might help you during your handwriting programming. So hopefully there's a few things, I'm sure there's a few things in there that you already know, but I'm hoping that some of the activities and some of the ideas I share, you might get some ideas that you could then implement into your classroom when it comes to handwriting. Okay, the importance of handwriting in the digital age. I think there's so much for us to cover in such a crowded curriculum, but handwriting for me was always something I did every morning. If you walked past my classroom at 8:45 in the morning, my class would be sitting there doing handwriting. I just found it really important, and it was a really great activity to ease them into the day as well. It was never long, it was only sort of half a page, or maybe it was just watching a YouTube video of how to form a letter, but I always did handwriting every day. Handwriting activates the brain in different ways than an iPad can. It's really, really important. And it also can improve recall and memory. So, I mean, there's so much research that's been done. You just have to do a quick Google search to really find that research to prove the importance of handwriting and writing. And handwriting can impact other aspects of writing. So if a student is struggling with their handwriting, then their phonics, their spelling, their sentence structure, their punctuation, their ideas are then going to struggle with that as well, because they're just struggling with that first step of writing on a piece of paper. And I think that's important to remember with early years students, is there's so much for them to think about when they're writing, that if we really help them develop their handwriting skills, we're taking away that barrier so that then they can focus on the phonics and the spelling and the sentence structure and so forth. And I just popped a quote in there, which I absolutely love. Sort of outlines everything I've just said in those 3 points earlier. Research suggests that the process of forming letters while handwriting activates neural pathways that are associated with strong reading skills. So that just, proves that connection between putting pen or pencil to paper and how it can affect the brain. So it's a no-brainer there. Okay, So the main building blocks for teaching handwriting, there is quite a lot of them. As I said earlier, handwriting is a huge topic, and I'm hopefully going to cover quite a lot of the topics in this webinar. So we've got pre-writing and fine motor skills, the importance of having those skills before really going into letter formation, core strength for a student's posture, crossing of the midline activities, pencil grip, pencil control, letter patterns and letter formation. So they're sort of the main building blocks. The students need to have great pre-writing and fine motor skills, core strength. They need to be able to cross the midline. They need to have good pencil grip and pencil control before you can then go into letter patterns and letter formation. So there is steps along the way when it comes to teaching our students the best handwriting and developing their skills as best we can. Okay, when I was teaching, I knew that there were certain shapes that students needed to be able to do before they could actually form letters during handwriting. But I actually hadn't seen something like this before. I'm sure a lot of you have, but I thought I'd throw it in there because I found it really interesting. I mean, no surprises really, particularly for teachers in the early years, but still a nice reminder. So, of course, you've got the vertical line, the horizontal line, circle, sort of imitating that at the ages of 2, 2.5, but being able to do that at the age of, say, 3. Doing the cross shape, the square, the right and left diagonal lines, so you can see the different developmental milestones they have to go through. And then by the age of 5, doing the cross shape and the triangle shape are really important. And it's the cross shape. When a child can do that, they can copy a significantly higher number of letters than little ones who can't. So I guess that just gives you an idea as to what, looking at children and seeing what sort of shapes they're actually able to do before we start to push that letter formation and push those handwriting skills. So it's a nice little, I guess, assessment piece that you could do with students, particularly in prep when they first come into your classroom. You'd hope that they'd have majority of those shapes down packed, but you know, you've got kids who might not be 5 yet, and maybe they're just developmentally, they're just a little bit slower. So it's all about helping them with doing those shapes and lots of practice as well. It's also important to know that they need to be able to form those letters before we then push on, which I know makes it hard when you've got a whole class that you're trying to teach. Okay, fine motor. This is obviously a no-brainer. Fine motor development, which is, you know, the fingers, the muscles, is super, super important for handwriting skills in the early years. And I really, really love this graphic here. I actually got this from Tam from Miss Learning Bee. If you follow her on Instagram, she's a highly experienced early years teacher, and I remember seeing her sharing this graphic, and as soon as I knew I was talking about fine motor, I really wanted to share it because it does show that students who enter our class, particularly in prep, their hands are still developing, and you can see that through these x-rays. So little hands are still developing all the way up to age 7. So it's really, really important that we include those fine motor activities in the classroom to help them with their fine motor, which will then help them with their handwriting. So it's all about incorporating all of those activities and fun activities into the classroom. We know there's so much. You just have to search on Pinterest or Google or check out what teachers are doing on Instagram to see all the fun fine motor activities that we can include into the classroom. So I thought I'd share a few, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen them, and I'm sure a lot of you have got some fantastic fine motor activities you already do in the classroom. I'd love to hear them or see them, so pop them in the Q&A function to share with other teachers what fine motor activities you've done that has worked and that your students love, but it's often the really simple ones that work the best. So I've just got there playing with Play-Doh to strengthen students' fingers and hands. Of course, we know Play-Doh, the importance of that. Lacing and threading activities to develop hand-eye coordination. Cutting activities with scissors to strengthen hands. And then, of course, simple opening and closing activities, such as using pegs on peg cards. So we've got on the TeachStarter website, and one of our staff members will put a link in the Q&A function now. We have some really fantastic peg cards where the students have a card and they just have to use a peg, open the peg with their pointer and thumb and put the peg on the cards. And it's also learning a different activity as well. It's also, I think there's some letter activities and sound activities, syllable peg cards as well. So that's another thing, is that a lot of these activities can be included in learning about another topic, and students don't even realise that they're practicing their fine motor. That little picture there is super cute. I thought I'd just put it in because I think it's a really nice idea, but it's using the tongs. So tongs to pick up the pom-pom and put the pom-pom into the different sections on the dinosaur. Okay. All right, here's some other really cool activities. This first activity is actually on our website as well. And it's a similar sort of thing, using the wooden pegs, but you actually stick the legs of the animal onto the pegs. And then the students need to match the correct legs and tail for each of the animals. They can have a little bit of fun and mix them up, put the pig's legs on the zebra body and have a little bit of fun with that. So we'll share that link as well. These little water dropper things are super cute as well. This girl's having a lot of fun. Super simple as well, just using their hands to squeeze the top to pick up the water from one bowl and put the water into another bowl. Super simple. You can also, I've seen lots of early years teachers where they've got a shape and there's little circles all over the shape. If you print them out, we've got some, I think they're called subitizing animal templates. I'll get one of the staff members to share the link below, but you could print them out, laminate them, and then because they've got the little circles on the shapes, the students can pick up a drop of water into their water dropper and then just place a little drop of water on each of the circles, and it's that movement of picking it up and holding your fingers until you get to the spot where you want the water drop to go, and then letting go. So and just doing a little drop as well. So it's having that fine motor control of that water droplet, which is super cool, super fun. Okay, this tennis ball one is, I love this one. So it's basically a tennis ball. You put a cut in the tennis ball where the mouth would be, with some googly eyes there. And then you get the students to use their whole hand. So this is important to, you're incorporating a variety of different muscles, and squeeze the ball, make the mouth open, and then they can put little pom-poms into the mouth. And that could be an addition activity, a counting activity. Again, you can incorporate a variety of different aspects or different learning areas into that fine motor activity. These little fuzzy friend templates are also on our website, so we'll share a link for these, but it's super simple, just picking up a pom-pom with the tongs, placing the pom-pom on the fuzzy friends, and the idea is you're colour matching with these ones as well. So there's another learning area that you're covering, all while practicing little fine motor skills. Okay, here's a little video of our pom-pom activity in action. This is our lovely Emma showing off how you can also use tweezers. So that's another thing, you can progress from the tongs where they're using the whole hand to using your pointer and thumb with the tweezer. And she's just, as you can see, she's matching the colours with the pom-poms. Later in this webinar, I talk about the importance of crossing the midline. This is where you can also incorporate that into it, because as you can see, Emma is picking up a pom-pom from the right-hand side, and then she's leaning over, crossing her hand or her arm over her body to the Fuzzy Friends templates and popping the matching colours there. So as you can see, it would be a lot of fun, and they're super cute. How cute are those little fuzzy friends? I'd love to know if you've used this resource in your classroom as well, or if you've got something similar, share in the comments. At the end of this webinar, I'll also go to the TeachStarter website so I can show you sort of a quick way to find all of these resources as well. I think got so many ideas, so many fine motor ideas. This one is another super cute idea. We've got these little shirts on the website, so I'll get one of our staff members to share that link. But as you can see, it's ordering numbers. So you've got maths activity, but the students are also using pegs for their fine motor as well. So I've got a little video of this in action with this child who's picking up the shirts, putting them in order, and placing the peg on the line as well. So again, you could do fine motor. You could also encourage them to cross their midline when they're putting number 1 up. So all these things that I'm sure a lot of you are already doing in the classroom, but it's just nice to hear that these are actually developmental things that the students need to do to help them with handwriting. Okay, crossing the midline, as I just spoke about before. So the body's midline is an imaginary line running vertically down the center of the body, so separating the left and right hand sides. Now, this might seem like a super simple developmental milestone, but some students do struggle with this. And basically, it's the ability to have your right hand and move it across that imaginary line over to the left hand side of your body and vice versa. So I'm not sure if you've had any kids in your class who move their writing, but they move their paper completely sideways and they write sideways. This could be a behaviour to show that they're struggling with crossing the midline because they're not having to cross the midline because they're writing across that way. Another thing students do, and I had some kids in my class do this, is they pick up their chair and they physically move to the left-hand side of the page to write on the left-hand side so that they're not having to actually cross that midline. So there's certain little behaviours that can pop up where you could go, I might just double check that they're actually able to cross the midline. And there's lots of activities that you can do to help them develop this milestone as well. And of course, it's really important for handwriting, so that's why we're covering it. So there's some super easy activities, and I've also written a blog about a lot of this as well on the website. So if there's something that I'm talking about and you want more information about it, head on to the website and you'll be able to find the blogs there. I'll get one of the staff members just to share this blog in the link in the Q&A function now, so you can access that if you're interested. But here are some activities you can do with your students to help them with crossing the midline. So you've got pass the ball around the circle. So they're all sitting in a circle and you pass the ball around, simple. So they're getting it from the person on the right, moving their arms over to their left-hand side. Back-to-back passing the ball, which is similar, just partners though, and you're just passing the ball around the couple sitting on the carpet. Playing clapping games, lots of fun, but they're having to cross the midline often. Playing Twister, bit of fun. Some simple stretching, so basically getting your right hand and stretching over to your left hand foot, getting your right hand and stretching over to the left foot and vice versa. So there's lots of stretching you can do which encourages the students to cross their midline. Having a big blackboard and doing an infinity loop. They have to do quite a big one in order to cross their midline, but that's just, you could have the infinity loop already there so they don't even have to think about the shape and just go over it again and again and again. And then oversized tracing. So that image there is something we've got on the website. So you could print them A3 and then encourage your students to sit. You have to make sure that a lot of these activities they're sitting front on, don't allow them to move their chair or move the paper, and they have to get the pen and start on the left-hand side and follow those lines. So they're practicing different patterns, but they're also encouraged to cross their midline and go over the lines that are in those animals. So I'll get there. I think they're called handwriting animal patterns for the Teach Starter staff online. If you could drop a link for those as well so that whoever's online can check out that resource as well. Okay, pencil grip, quite controversial. Do we have to fix a poor pencil grip? What do you think? What would you do if you had a student come to your class who's got a poor pencil grip? Do you believe we should spend time fixing it? There's so many different ideas out there. But particularly when students start year 1 and year 2, they've been holding their pencil for a couple of years. So changing that is super, super difficult. I'm not sure if any of our older or even year 2 and 3 teachers out there have noticed a poor pencil grip and have tried to fix it. It's actually very, very difficult. I believe if it's not affecting their handwriting, if it's not affecting the way that they write, they're not struggling to do their writing, they're not getting easily fatigued, they're not complaining that their hand hurts, or they're not like my James and just can't get the writing down on the paper, then I don't think it really needs to be changed. Some people may have a different train of thought. It's also, what's their pencil grip look like? If you've got a pencil and you're holding like that, that's going to make it really difficult once you get on to cursive writing. But if it's like the typical thumb up or 2 fingers as the driver, I don't know. I think if it's foundation and they're holding it not well at all, we need to fix it. And if it's affecting their writing, we need to fix it. Other than that, I'm not sure if I'd go there. Obviously, how do I help a child with poor pencil grip? If you've decided that you do think they need help, you've got the pencil grips that you can purchase at the shops. But you also have some cool little hacks that I'm going to talk you through here. So you've got the bulldog clip, where you just put that on the pencil and instantly you can have the pointer, the thumb, and the resting finger in the right spot. You've also got this one, which you can use a pom-pom or anything small in those 2 fingers that don't really need to be necessarily on the pencil, and it encourages, if they hold that in those fingers, in the ring and little finger, you encourage them just to use the 3 fingers there. And the next one is the pinch and flip trick. This is actually one of the ones that worked really well for a lot of the kids in my class. Before handwriting, we would use the pinch and flick trick, and it seemed to really help them. It's such a simple idea. You literally have the pencil, you can dangle it like that, just with their pointer and their thumb, and then flick it over. And it's just, I don't know, it works. So there's some little hacks, hopefully, that might help some students if you decide that you think that they need to have extra help with fixing their pencil grip. Okay, letter shapes. So these are, again, these posters and these pattern worksheets are available on the website if you've decided maybe these are some things that you could use in your classroom. We know that there's sort of a group of different letters that have a certain pattern, and we've got shapes in the alphabet that we can help kids practice before we even get into letter formation. So of course you've got the arches, so the H, the M and the N, they have that arch sort of pattern. You've got letters that have tails, so you've got the G and the J and the Y, so sort of practicing doing tails. And you've also got the waves, so you've sort of got the U, the V, the W, depending on the font and what state you are in Australia or wherever you may be in the world. There's all sorts of different fonts. But they're sort of the main patterns that we see in the alphabet. So if we encourage the students, and a lot of the time in handwriting books, you'll notice those patterns practiced at the start before you get into the letter formation. And that's because that can really assist and help students when it comes to forming letters if they've already practiced those sorts of patterns. So the shapes in the alphabet posters and those pattern worksheets, I'll get one of the staff members to drop the links to those as well in the Q&A. Super helpful, super helpful stage to go through at the start of the year, particularly in foundational prep. Okay, once you've done all of that, you've got some great fine motor activities. The kids are their fine motor is really developing well. You've done crossing the midline, you've done all the patterns, you've looked at pencil grip. it's onto letter formation. And often these are sort of all happening at the same time, but it's sort of important to realise the stages that students will go through when it comes to best handwriting practice. So I've just put there, you can't catch writing skills, they need to be explicitly taught. You need to explicitly teach letter formation to students. Then I've got their shapes and patterns before letter formation, so making sure that we've practiced those shapes, those pre-writing skills and those patterns. Then when you're up to letter formation, there's a few simple things you can do. You can get students to trace them, then go on to them copying them, and you might have seen this in handwriting worksheets as well, where they trace the letter and then they do it themselves, then they copy it. Giving them a starting point, so where is the starting point for this letter, and then encouraging them to do it independently. So going through those stages is really going to help them cement the formation of each of the letters. I'll show you that we've got Teach Starter handwriting videos on YouTube, which are super helpful. They are only for Queensland Font at the moment. We might include a variety of other videos soon, but it's definitely a good starting point just to show the students the formation of the letters, because they're quite similar, but I think we need an Australia-wide font, just saying, and handwriting lines. They're all different across all the states, but that's another webinar. And make it fun. Don't just use pen and paper. Make it fun for them. Use the videos. Get them to stand out and do the letter formations in the air or on a friend's back. I often got them to do that while they were sitting on the carpet. Okay, let's practice that H. Let's do that on your partner's back. Simple things like that make it really fun and interesting for them to learn. Okay, here's an example of one of our handwriting videos. You'll hear at the start we've got a little rhyme, and then we show them how to do it, and then they practice it in the air, and then at the end we encourage them to then go and practice it in their handwriting books. So we've got that sort of the stages of helping them learn that letter.
Welcome to handwriting. Let's start with our handwriting chant. 1, 2, 3, 4. Are your feet flat on the floor? 5, 6, 7, 8. Chairs in, back up straight. 9, 10, 11, 12. Show me how your pencil's held. Today we are going to learn how to write the letter A. Let's go. Start at the top and draw a loop. From that point, draw a short line down. And once again, start at the top and draw a loop. From that point, draw a short line down. Now it's your turn. Use your pointer finger and follow with me. Let's try that again. You have made the letter A. Now, let's try to practice them in our handwriting books.
How cute are those videos? I just think if I was in the classroom, I would absolutely be using them. I did use something similar, but what I would do is I'd put the video on a Monday, and if we were just practicing one letter for the week, or maybe we were doing 2 letters, but I'd start my handwriting lesson every morning with that video. So as soon as they heard the sound, as soon as they heard the voice, they knew it was handwriting time. And it was just a fantastic way to hook them in and for them to visually see how to write each of the letters. From there, you could do some super fun activities to help them practice the letter formations for each of the letters of the alphabet. So we do have a blog which outlines all of these activities. So I might get one of the staff members to drop that in the Q&A function now as well. But here are just 3 super easy ideas, which I'm sure a lot of early years teachers have done before. There's if you use a Ziploc bag, there's a particular mixture you can create where the students can use a cotton bud and they actually trace the letter and you can see it through the mixture. Then we've got super, super fun shaving cream if you're up for that, if you're game for a little bit of mess. Very, very sensory and kids absolutely love it. Then this is another simple idea, just using chalk, and if you feel like the students still need help with actually going over the letter. You could draw the letter for them, then they could go over it with another colour. And then you could always say, get a paintbrush, put it in some water, now let's make that letter disappear. So it's just continually doing that letter over and over again, which is super, super important for them to really cement how to form that letter. Okay. Letter reversal and mirror writing. Now, this is another one that I've written a blog about because it's super, super common. I'm sure you've all seen it before and had lots of parents come to you saying, my child's doing their D and B back to front. And we all know it's normal developmental behaviour for students between the ages of 3 and 7. Both left-handed and right-handed students can struggle with letter reversal. A lot of the time there's been this sort of push that it's often left-handed. Left-handed kids always struggle with letter reversal, which it's not. It can be both. Of course, it's a sign of dyslexia, but it's not often the case when they're the ages 3, 4, 5 or 6, but it is something we need to be aware of. So if we're trying to help them, we're doing lots of activities to help them with their letter reversal and they're really, really struggling, it is something that we have to be aware of. In the blog, I share a fantastic way to assess students with their letter formation, because you might look at a child's work and go, no, they're not reversing their letters. But if you watch certain behaviours, you might actually notice that they may be struggling with which way to write their letters. Certain behaviours such as resorting to a capital B and a capital D instead of the lowercase, because that's a lot easier to differentiate. Beginning their F's and their J's or their F from the bottom because they can't remember which way to actually do the curve. Another behaviour that I saw in one of my students, which is quite common as well, is starting a D and then doing the circle over and over again because they're trying to work out which side to do the stick on. So there's those sorts of behaviours that you'll really notice if you do decide. I think it's really important to do this assessment. It's a super easy thing you can do, and I've got some really great hints and tips in that blog for what to do if you do notice students struggling with letter reversal. In that blog as well, I talk about some different visuals and different practicing activities you can do to practice letters, as well as some really fantastic ways to help kids work out. Of course, you've got that. There's lots of visuals like the B and the D, the B and the D for a bed. I think we've got a bat and a drum, and it's just a visual that really shows them which side the stick goes on for those letters. And having obviously the letters up on the classroom wall as well that are at the right level for them, at their eye level, rather than being too high. It's really important that we display these sorts of visuals at their eye level so it's really accessible to them. Okay, that was a lot of information. I'm hoping that some of those hints and tips and activities and a refresher of some of those developmental milestones have helped. I have tried to cover quite a lot, and hopefully I've helped out with some questions you might have. I'm just going to jump on to the TeachStarter website just to show you what we've got available on there. So if I head into handwriting, so if you search handwriting as a collection, don't press enter and just click on that handwriting as a learning area. What you'll see is lots of resources, particularly the ones I've spoken about, plus heaps more on there that you can have a look at and see if it's going to possibly help you out in your classroom. We've got these lowercase letter formation task cards, which are super easy for the tracing stage when you're going through that with your students. There's the pre-writing pencil control sheets, which I'm sure one of the staff members has already shared, but it's all in here. So if you've missed the links or you think about it in a week's time, just search handwriting and you'll find it on the website. We've got the pencil grip flip trick as well. So that was the idea of how to help students with their pencil grip with that little flip trick. Got lots of worksheets sort of for the older grades there. and so you'll see the blogs that I've been talking about will be accessible in here as well. What I wanted to quickly show you, I know we're almost up for time, was this. So we have a handwriting worksheet widget. So this blog talks about how to actually create your worksheets, but it's super easy. I'll get one of the TeachStarter staff just to drop the handwriting widget link in the Q&A function as well. But basically, all you have to do here is, just say you're wanting to practice A with your students. So you do a few on that line, a few on that line, a few on that line. We're going to keep it landscape. My state is Queensland. It automatically does your lines for you based on what we know the states normally use. But if you have different handwriting lines, which is often the case, you can change that yourself. You've got the school font option, so I'm going to click Queensland Print. Now, this is what I wanted to show you. This here is a colour. So this is the colour of the letters. So if you click on that and go to grey, like a grey colour, like grey, that grey, yeah, that'll do. And then you click download. What you'll get is you will get a lighter letter. So you can see that it's slightly lighter, and you can get your students to trace over those and then copy them. Then perhaps the next day you could say, I want you to copy them, and then the next day I want you to do it yourself. Okay, I want you to give it a go yourself. So that's just a super easy worksheet you can create. You could put whatever you want on there. You could do any of the letters. If you've got some students who are struggling with the Y, but other students are struggling with a different letter, you could really differentiate it that way as some extra practice for students when they're learning the formation of the letters. So hopefully that's been helpful. I know I've covered a lot. I've tried to really incorporate hints and tips of things that I have used in my classroom, or I know they've worked for other teachers as well. So thank you so much for joining this webinar all about handwriting, one of my passions. You can probably tell because I could talk underwater about handwriting and how to do it in the classroom, but I really believe that doing handwriting practice daily, particularly in the early years, is really important for our little human beings in our classroom. This webinar has been recorded and it will be emailed to you so that you can rewatch it or share the content, or share it with any colleagues that you feel they might get benefit from watching this webinar. Please feel free to share it with them. All the best, and I hope to see you on a future webinar. Thank you.